A new Blender feature came out, and you know what that means. This guy needs to soar in and talk about it. It's not necessarily the most interesting. I might even say that it's a boring feature that was added, but it is one that I would benefit from, and I figure it's like 1:30 in the morning. I don't really have much else to do, and I thought it'd be fun to record a tutorial. You know what? Sue me. So, basically, what I'm talking about is there's a new node called Index Switch Node. Sounds really fascinating. It's about as fascinating as it sounds like. Basically, what it is it's a node with dynamic sockets. That's actually what's exciting about it. You get to add as many inputs as you want, which is something I really want for the math node, but they refuse to give it to me. But it has as many inputs as you want, and then you switch between those inputs using a number, a index that goes down the list. Indexing starts at 0. I assume this can be geometry or whatever. I guess we're gonna find out because I didn't take I didn't take the care to try this out before recording. So the way I'm accessing this is I went to the Blender website, which by the way is back up. You remember that it was under DDoS attack, and I claimed that I wasn't the one to do it. Well, whoever was doing it, not me, seems to have quit, or maybe they like changed services. I don't know how IT works, but Blender.org is back up, and if you go to the download page, build, not branch, you go to daily, you're going to see that there's a new alpha build. They seem to do this. There's some dude just clicking the keyboard every 20 minutes uploading. This is the new Blender version, which I need to unzip, which will take a second. And it should have all the tantalizing new features of the index switch node. So let's wait here together. One thing I always find interesting is that when it's like transferring the data, it does it in kind of like waves. It's like, oh, going super fast and then slow, fast and then slow. There's almost like some kind of, I don't know. You'd expect it to be a constant speed the entire time, but there must be some kind of like fiasco, some kind of inside out saga kind of stuff going on in here. I'll cut here. I'll spare you. Okay, it is done, and it can go. It can go in my collection of like 4.1 versions that I've like huddled together. Okay, so first order of business is I want to see if this node is here, and if so, I want to know if it's living up to the hype that even I'm not pretending like it's there. Okay, let's see. So we're going to go to geometry nodes. We're going to make a geonodes group, delete it, and if I type in index switch, okay, there it is in all its glory. The big deal, again, do I have full screen? The big deal, again, of this is that we have dynamic sockets. So in theory, if I was to add like a geometry input, so let's put in a UV sphere and another, we can just kind of keep populating this. Again, it's not that exciting as a use case currently, but if you were to add this to the math node, better watch out. And I guess you can also remove them. To test this, let's just make a bit of a demo, and then I have an idea that's actually more interesting, in my opinion, that I've actually kind of made a tutorial about, and maybe somebody can benefit from. But just to test, we're going to make a cube, a sphere, a cube, and a cone. You needed this complicated node group to switch between these. Okay, so let's try it. We have a sphere, cube, cylinder. Fine. Let's add a bit of a math function to it to try it out. So I'm going to take seconds and take the modulo of 3, because the seconds are integers, right? And then if we mod 3, it's going to be 0, 1, or 2 in theory. So let's plug that in here. And yes, now we have a mesh switching every second. Now, this could have been done, I just want to mention, this could have been done with like 2 switch nodes since it needs to have 3 inputs, but that's like really a pain to try to figure out. So I'm happy with this. And then if we wanted to take this a step further, let's add one more mesh. We got our cylinder, and now I'm going to make it mod 4, and that should switch between 4 shapes. Okay, beautiful. Let's try it with something more interesting. So I'm going to tell you what a random walk is and why this would be useful for something called a random walk. Now, before I talk about it, I just want to mention there's this book. It's kind of a math book called it's called The Drunkard's Walk. I think it talks about the random walk as well. Read it. It's very good. And I think it's a different name for the random walk. It's called The Drunkard's Walk. And it's called that because imagine you have a drunk man right here. He just left the bar and he's very drunk. When he's walking, he decides that, he's in the city. He can either go north, south, west, or east, right? It's kind of like a block New York City design city. So this drunk man is out of his mind, just doesn't know where he's going. And he just goes up and then he stops. And then he looks around. There's another 4 options. He could go back down, up, left, or right. He decides to go left. Each time he's going to do it by the same distance that we'll call a unit a distance of 1. And this guy is like never getting back home, right? So he just kind of keeps doing this. So maybe he goes down, and then he goes down, and then left, and then up, and then left, and then right, and then up. This is what a random walk is. On every step of the random walk, this drunk man is in an intersection. He's like, I don't know, I'll go north, south, east, or west. Now, you can imagine that if we wanted to simulate something like this, we have to simulate at each iteration, at each intersection, pick a random direction. But there are 4 of these, and you could kind of do some random value vector nonsense, but it's actually not as easy as you would think. So if we now switch this to wow, we have a lot of options. I want to see collection in here. Oh, no, it is. Cool. I'm going to pick vector. And then what I want to do is I want to give our 4 options. So you can either go right, so that's 1 on the x, left, so that's -1 on the x, up, or down. So those are the 4 options on the xy plane. And what I want to do is I want to have a drunkard, we'll call him this point, this is our drunkard, walk through our intersection. So what I was thinking is we kind of like run this through a simulation zone, right? So currently if I run this, nothing interesting happens. It's just going to return the same thing every frame. But imagine now what we're going to do is we're going to tell this point to move with an offset of our thing, of our like index switch. So currently, I guess it decides to go up. If I made it index 3, it will go down, and then, left and right and all of this. I want the index to be randomized every single frame. And to do that, what I can do, there's a couple ways you can do it, but I think the most obvious, honestly, this is the only way I can think about it. I can be coy and say that. There's so many possibilities, but I literally cannot think of one other than this. We're going to use a random value as an integer. Reason being, we're using index 0, 1, 2, or 3. In other words, we want an integer between 0 and 3. That's going to be our index. And every time we change the seed, in theory, it should pick a, not necessarily a new direction, but a one relative to the seed. In other words, if I take my seed and make it the frame number, so on every frame this updates, I'm going to zoom out, we get our drunkard's walk. Look at that. Beautiful. And one thing you're going to notice, by the way, is he tends to gravitate towards the center because for every left that he makes, it's very probable at some point he's going to make a right, and those are going to kind of even out. So we got our drunkard walking, but let's also like show the path of him walking. So maybe, how do I want to do this? Maybe instead of a point, what we can do is we can have a path. So this is the drunkard's path. It's going to be a mesh line. We're going to say do this for like 100 iterations. And if so, I'm going to make it go from frame 1 to 100. And then for each iteration, I want it to, how do I want to do this? I want to move every point except the last one. Okay, follow my logic here. If we do a math and add a index here, or like a parameter, and we add 1 and send it back over, what I'm thinking is this is going to start at index 0. Then it's going to, on each iteration, feed through here and add 1. So it's going to be equal to 1, sent back to the beginning, 2, 3, etc. So this is our counter. going between 0 and 99 because there's 100 points. And what I'm saying is on each frame, I want to offset everything except the last index. Does that make any sense? Let me see. I'm trying to figure this out live. I'm thinking we look at where the index is greater than this value. And under that circumstance, or maybe greater than, I don't know. Let's just try it and put it into selection. And what I'm thinking this is going to do is we have like 100 points. I'm going to put these all in the middle. So we have 100 points that are all centered right here. So this is going to be our mesh line. And then on every iteration, everything like the top 99 frames are going to get offset by a random walk, then the 98, then the 97. So it's kind of leaving behind what I'm calling a poop trail, kind of like you're playing a game of Snake. Maybe, in theory. I'm talking as if it's worked. I don't know yet. So let's see. So what you're telling me is that what I did makes no sense. Let's think about why. So on every frame, I see the issue. Basically, it's deciding a random number for every single point. I want a consistent random number, so I'm just going to set the ID to anything. It can be 0, 1, whatever. This is going to force it so that whatever number it picks, depending on that seed, in turn, whichever vector it picks is going to be the same for every point. At least that's what I'm hoping. That's what we get for doing it live. And then the cool thing about this, by the way, is I can just bump this up. So I'm going to make it 500 iterations, and then I'm going to do something really cool with this. You're going to like this. So I'm going to play it, let it run for 500 iterations. So sometimes it kind of goes back on itself, which is why you don't see an update. But this is going to be our random walk. And we could have easily also done this with a repeat zone, but I'm just letting it cache all the way to 500. Kind of makes an interesting design, doesn't it? And then what I want to say is on the last frame, when we generated this, again, you could do it with a repeat zone, I'm going to take this mesh and convert it into a curve, potentially. Not sure. Mesh to curve, and then I wanted to trim the curve was the idea, but I can see why this might not work. Oh, no, that works. I wanted to basically like show the path. Very cool, very cool. So I think if I get rid of this and bake our geometry node, so now the simulation isn't running, this is just the path that it took. I add a new geonodes, completely new with none of this junk. And this is going to be our like path definer that lets us like animate it. I'm going to take our input and basically do the same thing I did before. So curve to mesh, nope. How do I control X? Mesh to curve is what I was talking about. We take a mesh to curve, and then for the curve, we trim it such that the end point, it can start at 0. This can be equal to, well, let's say we want it to take like 100 frames, then we divide this by 100. So after, no, we want it to be frame. So after frame is equal to 100, then this is equal to 1. Well, what I'm trying to say is the frame has to go up to frame 100 such that this is equal to 1 such that it's ended. And that is our random walk animation. And the point of this was that it was easier to do with the index switch node. Very cool. Okay, I'm done.